Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Friday, April 23rd, 2021, and this is episode 14B. Before I start things off, yes, today is the finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I will be watching it later. I have not seen it. I will be reporting on it. I'll be discussing it Monday the 26th, which is coming up on Monday, and that'll be episode 15A this coming Monday, so everybody has time to watch it and enjoy it, including myself, and before I spoil the heck out of it on Monday and we talk about whatever it is that's happening on Twitter right now. I can't open Twitter because it's so full of spoilers, so, anyway, today we are not going to be talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We are going to be talking about, for starters, the comic book picks, things that I really enjoyed from this week. I have a lot of things to talk about for that. It was a really, really excellent week, especially for indie comics, and I guess Marvel Comics actually really had a great week as well. After that, we'll go ahead and go into Black Lightning episode 8. It was an okay episode. It could have been a little more exciting, I suppose, but there was a lot that was happening and a lot worth talking about for sure. After that, we go into our news and updates for the comic book industries that aren't strictly comic books. For the DCEU, we have some Flash movie updates, we have some Secret Invasion updates for the MCU, as well as Thor, Love and Thunder, and then a note on some updates for Mad Max Furiosa, because I am a fan of the Mad Max stuff, I suppose you could say. Finally, we will wrap it up with a bit of chat about the Wonder Girl number 1 preview that was put out. That is Joelle Jones's Wonder Girl comic, as well as the updates for Sony's streaming of their digital movies, where that's going to be in the future. And also today is the 23rd, so do remember that today on HBO Max, Mortal Kombat is out and available to watch. Once again, haven't seen that. I will definitely be watching that this weekend. Might be covering it on Monday or possibly next Friday's episode if that's something that people want to know about. I don't really know. Let me know. It might be just a brief little blurb. I have never played any of the Mortal Kombat games. We were not allowed to play video games growing up, so not really super familiar with it. As I understand it, it's just this big battle royale kind of that happens generationally, sort of, every so often of years, whatever the time period is. So, might talk about that on Monday's episode as well, but we'll definitely be talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier's finale in detail Monday as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the comic book picks before we get into more of the news and updates and Black Lightning. So, comic book picks. As I've kind of been doing the past couple of episodes, if you do want to skip over me rambling on about comic books and get straight into the other stuff that I talk about here, Black Lightning will be the next thing that I talk about. That takes place about 45 and a half minutes into the episode, if you just want to skip there. For the comic picks, I have a number of comics I'm going to be talking about, as usual. They are, as usual, in no particular order. It's kind of in the order that I read them, which isn't really in any particular order itself. Yeah, it's just the way that I read them. So, we are starting with The Many Deaths of Laila Starr, number 1, a fantastic premiere issue. And then we have Luna number 3, Jonah and the Impossible Monsters number 2, Monstress number 33, Captain Marvel number 28, Spider-Woman number 11, briefly Woman of Marvel number 1, Catwoman number 30, Eternals number 4, and wrapping it up with the Mighty Valkyries number 1, which was another really excellent premiere issue that I did not see coming as being that good. So super, super excited to talk about all this stuff. Let's go ahead and get started with The Many Deaths of Laila Starr number 1. This is by Ram V, who is, of course, the Catwoman writer, as well as the Swamp Thing writer at DC. Kind of still in shock about how well this first issue worked out for me. Absolutely immediately. It was one of those moments where you know by page 2 or 3 that this is a series that's I'm going to stick with this to the end, for sure. This is fantastic. Interestingly for me, as I kind of just started saying, those series tend to pop up when a writer who I'm familiar with from the quote-unquote big two, stupid thing to say, but the big two, moves to their own indie creator-owned comic project. There, of course, are massive exceptions to that rule. I won't list them here because that's pointless. But then stuff like this happens, like the many death of Laila Starr, and I'm hooked, and it all works out again. Just I reread it again this morning. It's fantastic. I had so much fun rereading it. What I loved about this in part was how much Ramvi brought so much Indian mythology, I suppose you could say, into play. Where the TV show Miracle Workers, if you're familiar with that, has Daniel Radcliffe. It's similar to like that kind of thing, but with the Hindu religions. And I know Hindu is an umbrella term for a lot of religions, kind of like you might refer to Christianity, Judaism, and Muslims as Abrahamic religions. Hindu is just the recognizable term I'm using to refer to people who worship these deities who appear in this comic, so there we go. I'm really bad at names of these things, and I'm not sure how many games we were actually given, but we do see the three-headed god, the god of life, and the god of death, who is the main character, of course, as kind of the three main mythological deities that we kind of see. The basic explanation of the plot, it kind of plays out in a different pattern than this, but this is basically kind of what happens. It plays out it plays out a lot more interestingly than how I'm going to explain this. Basically, a baby is born in Mumbai who the gods prophesize is going to be the end of all death. Therefore, God fires death from her job in heaven, and she gets sent to live out her mortal life on Earth, her remaining time on Earth. So she works it so that the body she is sent to is that of a woman who had jumped off a balcony, died in the hospital a little bit ago, and ends up being in the same hospital that baby is born in. So the first thing that Death learns as a human is that she can see ghosts, and one of these little ghosts is a small child who kind of follows her around. She goes and she finds the baby who's prophesized to end her era of being needed, I guess, with the intention of killing it. But then Death can't bring herself to kill the baby in her hands, especially after the little ghost girl tells her his name. She just can't do it. The little ghost girl tries to help her escape the hospital, but then she immediately gets hit by a bus and dies, obviously. The next time we see her, it's she wakes up in that body again, thanks to a friend of hers, the god of life, she calls him Prana. The twist is, it is 8 years later, and the boy she wanted to destroy isn't a baby anymore. So a lot of opportunity here for plot to go in different directions. And there's so many details that I left out of this issue. So much worth reading, even if I spoiled the basic plot for it here for you, it plays out in such a different way than what I've said. It's intricate, it's lovely, it's beautifully drawn. And I love how it shows the world from the perspective of as Hindu gods, something that is practically unheard of in Western comics, and it makes it so exciting. There's such a wealth of creativity beyond, straight white people. It's so nice to see stuff that's not the normal thing that we're seeing. So I really, really love this. Luna number 3, once again, a completely stunning work of art of a comic by Maria Levey. If issue number 2 was considered even mildly a filler issue, number 3 makes up for that in full. We learn a lot in this issue, and then there's a lot still left to be answered. So we learn first that the silver liquid Teresa drank, that was supposedly the dude's blood, was actually the other blue-colored god figure's blood. They drink it to remain immortal, I think. The purpose isn't quite clear yet. Things left to be answered in the last couple of issues here. But he himself, this guy, is some kind of angel figure who was captured on Earth and chained to this cave to be used to the whims of mortals. It's probably something that's been happening for decades, it would appear. He's been there for a while. When Teresa drinks the liquid this time, she's basically able to astrally project, very on accident, to where he is, and she's very surprised about everything that's happening. We still don't know why she is a key player in this also. but she goes and she astrally projects to him and speaks with him, and that's where he gives her all this information about his blood and having been captured and yada yada yada. They seem to be connected in a way that can't really be described with words. It's all very symbolic, and she feels like she knows him and trusts him as soon as she meets him. They have a little romp in the cave, of course, because this is that kind of comic, and when she wakes up or gets back into her body, she is with the other guy, the blonde guy who is kind of running this weird little desert cult who drinks this blue god's blood chained up in a cave. So there's still quite a bit left there to be filled in and clarified, but this is such a fun, trippy, gorgeous journey that Maria LeVay is putting on for us. If you're a fan of symbology, mythology, or just really great art, you really, really should check out Luna. So many of the panel decorations I look at as I read and think what excellent tattoos they would make. It's such a stunning effort, and I'm so excited to find out what all of these mysteries are. It's not just that they're mysteries, it's that you want to find out what they are, and I'm so curious. One thing I do have to say also, this isn't a comic, if I had to guess, this is not a comic that's going to end with the answers to these questions being written out for us on the page like a Defenders issue from the 80s, or the 70s. This is something that you're going to have to do a lot of reading into. Already we're having to do a little bit of that to figure out what's going on a little bit. You're going to have to kind of fill in between the lines. If you've read Faithless, that is a project that Maria LeVay did the art on with Brian Azzarello. There are 2 6-issue runs of it. It is gorgeous, not for kids. Repeat, not for kids. Or for the mild of heart, either, or squeamish people, none of that. But if you're familiar with that, I have a feeling that this is going to be kind of along the same lines, where Faithless took pretty much all 12 of those issues before they finally came out and said what was going on. For those first 11 issues of those 2 runs, you basically have to just assume through context what it is that's being referred to and who these people are. This is kind of along the same lines as what I'm kind of getting the feel of. Maybe in the end they're going to straight up say what's going on without the poetic terminology and everything wrapped around it, but just so you know, this is a comic that's very poetic. That's actually a great way to describe it. Not everything is clear, and it's just something you kind of have to absorb it the way that you read it and take everything kind of in turn. But it's really, really, really great if you're into that kind of stuff, symbolism, or kind of like trippy, somewhat unexplained stories. This is absolutely fantastic. It is gorgeous, Luna. Jonah and the Impossible Monsters and Monstress, I have a lot less to say about, so we'll kind of knock those out here. Actually, I'm not sure, is it Jonah and the Impossible Monsters, or is it Jonah? Questions that I don't know the answer to. I'm just gonna say Jonah, because why not? This issue was really, really cool. There was almost no dialogue or narration, period, in this issue, but we learned a lot. There was a lot of stuff that we just kind of assumed based on the first issue. This switches it up, for sure. We find out, most importantly, that Jonah isn't actually the main character's sister who's off looking for her. She is, all it said is, Dad brought her home one day. What does that mean? Did he find her in the woods? Did he breed her with another woman? Did he have a secret family? Did he make her in a test tube? Is she something that's not human? It really leaves enough room to question if Jonah is even human, or if she's the same species as these people if they're not on Earth. I don't really know what planet this is, but potentially Jonah has some connection to the monsters, because when you do see her in this issue, she is feral. It's easily a term that fits her, is feral. She resembles a bit like monkeys running through the trees, kind of like a giant ape. But this little girl with bushy red hair. And she does have, it seems, very animalistic tendencies, because when her sister figure reaches out to her after she's discovered her in the forest after, a year later that it's been since she disappeared, She reaches out to her, and you can see in these flashbacks to when they were, a family, and when she felt safe around this girl and stuff like that, and she trusts her. But at the last second, she turns away and says no and runs off. So that's also something that makes me think that Jonah is maybe connected to the monsters, because she seems to have some kind of guilt or sense that she cannot go back to the regular human world. For some reason, she feels like she can't, and it doesn't seem to be because she loves this new life she's found for herself. It seems that she has possibly staying away to protect these people. I don't know, or possibly she feels like it's her duty to be whatever it is she is. I don't know, but for whatever reason, she turns away from her sister and continues to be living in the woods. So very simple issue, very minimal. But this is so cool. It's just such a simple but at the same time complex comic, and it's the best that I can describe it. It's all I ever keep saying about it, but it's what it is. Monstress number 33. This is of course one of my favorite series, but I have such a hard time talking about it because there's so much going on. These aren't characters that are easy to explain and have someone follow along with. These aren't like superhero archetypes like Superman and Batman that we see repeated across multiple publishers and stories and genres and formats across history. This is incredibly unique, complicated, original characters and situations and worlds. So it becomes a little difficult for me to kind of gather what information out of the wealth of information that you get when you read the series, the world building and everything. What if that is what you need to kind of fill in the most recent issue, whatever it is that I'm talking about now. So that's why I kind of struggle with talking about Monstress. It's not at all because of any favoritism. Definitely not. I actually prefer Monstress. It's one of my favorite comics that come out, period. And everybody who I recommend it to, as I've said, I think a couple of times in this podcast, every person that I recommend it to who reads it comes back and says, thank you for recommending this to me. This was a journey, and I love it. People become obsessed with it. It's so good. But for its brief little sum up for this issue, the last issue, 32, ended with the Ancient Wolf Queen. Hard to explain that one. It's what it sounds like, Ancient Wolf Queen, arriving to where Micah and her aunt and her lover, who is her aunt's wife, is, former lover. So this issue has some awkward moments, of course, and also some really satisfying ones because Micah was able to drop the queen on them, basically, without them expecting it. And that was a cool power move. But basically, what's kind of a cool takeaway is in the end of the issue, I forget the names and the terminology of people, but the people who work with the witches, there's the Arcanics, and then there's the humans and their people, and they have the witches who want to use the blood of the Arcanics, who are the animals, the lilium in their blood to make magic. See, this is why I have trouble explaining this. There's so much. It's a wealth of information, but anyway, the villains, we'll just say, attack the city with rage gas that attacks the Arcanics, who are the animal people, and that includes the Wolf Queen. So now you have this literally ancient Wolf Queen who is like going crazy and trying to attack Micah, her granddaughter, because she's been gassed. I can't recommend Monstress enough. I know I probably don't make it sound very good, but it's fantastic. Sonata Takeda does the art, and Marjorie Liu is the writer, and they are a duo who, they are fantastic. They work together on, I believe, some of the X-23 comics that Marjorie Liu was working on a couple of years ago, back when Laura was X-23, and now she's Wolverine. Woohoo! Anyway, let's move on. I'm getting off track. Captain Marvel number 28. It was a good enough issue, but I somehow find myself a little bit disappointed that she and Stephen Strange were just kind of a fling. I will say it was funny to see how, it's always funny, I guess, to see how the superheroes kind of interact with each other and refer to each other, how they're calling him Steven, because they're co-workers, basically. But it was built up to be such a thing, even on social media by Kelly Thompson, who is the writer. But then it comes up halfway through this issue, and it's just kind of, it's whatever. It doesn't really matter that much in the end, and then he turns down teaching her magic, and that's kind of it for them at this point. And yes, he's on the cover of I think issue 29 is what it is he's on the cover of, but that doesn't really mean anything. So I guess that was the part that he was going to be in it, and that's it. And I'm also a little bit unsure. Carol ends up going to Enchantress for help at teaching her magic, since Strange and everybody else basically refuses, with the point of, A, you can't just learn magic. You can't just go out there and pick up a book and learn it by the time you finish the book. And B, you are so powerful, and it's interesting they're bringing this up, you are so powerful that someone like you needs to have a weakness, and if magic is your only weakness, we should not be teaching you magic. Those are basically the only two reasons that are given. That second reason about she's too powerful if she was to have magic, that's very interesting. I know she had the whole thing, there was the reason that this is even able to be pulled off as a reason, without it sounding horribly sexist, is because she did have that arc last year or the year before, whatever it was, some time ago, where she was, quote-unquote, the Dark Avenger, because, long story short, the Kree Supreme Intelligence got combined with this Inhuman monster, and the Inhumans come from the Kree, so that's how that's connected, and becomes this thing that made Carol, told her, I'm gonna destroy all these people if you don't kill your fellow Avengers. So she has to fight all her fellow Avengers, basically. And then it ends up that she has a plan anyway and everything's fine. But that's kind of what we're led to believe, or at least what I believe, is how they're getting away with saying you need to be able to be stopped if something were to happen. Is because, as we saw previously, not a single one of us could stop you in that run, even though, we didn't realize that you were actually, have a safe house for us to hide in afterwards. But you can't communicate that because he's watching. It was a whole thing. Complicated situation. I just get an odd feeling here about how that's Queen of Fables. I've mentioned it before, the Queen of Fables syndrome, which is what we call here, when female characters aren't allowed to be let's say, as powerful to the level of Superman. And yes, Superman does have, his own weaknesses, but, if you were to say Superman and Captain Marvel fight, people would probably say Superman would win because he's more powerful than her, so why can't she be powerful like that too? You kind of go back and forth with it a little bit about if that's, I don't know how I feel about that. So anyway, I also feel back and forth about how she goes to Enchantress, and I guess Enchantress is going to say yes. That's how the issue ends. She goes to Enchantress to learn magic. I guess Enchantress is going to be the one to teach her magic. And obviously I'm going to complain that she didn't go to Clea for help, because she's basically the most female version of Doctor Strange that there is out there. So, meh. But a little disappointing in this issue about a couple of things. But overall, it was good. And I get the feeling now, after Carol goes to Enchantress, that she is kind of initiating a self-fulfilling prophecy by doing this, and her actions are actually going to be what causes whatever this thing is to go wrong somehow at the end of this arc, whatever it is that she's worried about stopping. I'm not really sure if it's going to be, I guess, Ove, and then her going to Enchantress. Enchantress is Ove's future mother, I guess, is how you would say that. In the future, she has him as a child, which is a weird concept because she's already lived for so long, but I guess it doesn't matter because she's immortal or whatever. She's this guardian. And the baby is with Namor too. So I don't know. I feel this is kind of, I feel like she's shooting herself in the foot, first with breaking up with Rhodey, because she feels like that future is definitely going to happen, and now going to Enchantress, when Enchantress kind of proved in the future that she wasn't worth trusting because she let Ove win, even though she could admit that he should not be able to win. She let him win just because he's her son and she loved him. So what's going to happen when he shows up and says, hey, I'm your future son? I just feel like she's shooting herself in the foot and making this kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy situation. I don't see how it's going to really go well, her working with Enchantress. Maybe it's somehow that Enchantress will be like, no, screw you, future me. I don't know. Well, I guess I have to wait and see. But this was a good enough issue, I feel kind of iffy about some of the things that happened in it. Spider-Woman number 11 was a really fun issue after this new arc of Spider-Woman I'm very excited for after everything that happened in those first 10 issues. We kind of have a new era for Jessica Drew to kind of thrive in, hopefully, here. But her boyfriend, not baby daddy, some people I see are reviewing it saying he's not that baby's father. We don't know who that baby's father is. Might come into play later. I don't actually know. I don't really care right now. But Roger Porcupine is not Jessica Drew's baby daddy. He is not connected to her like that. He is not biological father to that baby. Just want to make that very clear. Because he's trying to propose to her, and good God, I hope she says no. Like, hardcore no. It's probably not what's going to happen, but I hope she just no. I think, if anything, this issue showed why that would not work out for them. He spends in this issue a whole night trying to propose to her, and between them going out to dinner, her having to stop and be a hero for a little while, and then her coming home that night, he can't really even get in a word in edgewise, let alone have time to propose to her. So them getting married feels like a totally backwards disaster in the making. She's living her life so far beyond what he can even conceive as just his little human dude. I can't see her wanting to slow her life down to find time for someone as normal and as basic, for lack of a better term, than him. What I'm concerned about here is he's going to break it off here because the issue kind of ended with him looking sad and being, we need to talk. My concern is that he's going to break things off because he'll tell her that he was trying to propose and she ignored him, and then he'll leave and she'll get all, I never knew what I had until it was gone, and propose to him herself, which I like Carla Pacheco. I love what she's been doing with Jess in the series, but I hate to say that that's something I can totally see her doing. She's a bit of a sap, and I tend to not like sappiness in my comics because it tends to not align with the characters in question. Like this, I don't feel like this is at all. If that was to happen, this issue of her completely ignoring him, basically, when he's trying to talk to her, that's Jessica Drew. Her stopping and slowing down and finding time to, like, walk his speed and marry him in this slow, emotional thing and having everybody come. No, that's not Jessica Drew. Are you kidding me? She wouldn't want that. And if that's what happens here, I will be not happy. But okay. Women of Marvel number 1 was a fun... It was a fun... It had some fun stories. My favorite was the She-Hulk versus Rhino one. It was kind of a longer one because it was really gorgeous, honestly, artistically, and it was clever, funny, handled Jen, honestly, very, very beautifully. Just a great little short story about She-Hulk. Maruko Tamaki had several one-page mini-comics, kind of in the vein of... similar to the humor that Zeb Wells did for the Heroes at Home mini-comics. There's about 4 or 5 of these Maruko Tamaki ones in this issue, and they were all really cute, featuring a lot of different artists, different artists on each story. The first one being Peach Momoko, so it's a really fun thing to open the issue up to. First thing you see is Peach Momoko's kind of manga-style art, and it is about Lady Deathstrike. Is that right? Yeah, Lady Deathstrike, that's her name. So it's a really funny story, and then there's one about Emma Frost. Oh gosh, I don't remember, but there's a bunch of other ones too. So really, it's if you like these female characters and these fun little stories that just kind of are insights to their world and their life, check out the Women of Marvel number 1 issue. It was a lot of fun to read, and had probably something for everybody to kind of take from it. So that's good. Catwoman number 30, which is another Rom V comic, but one that I was not so thrilled. I'm still having issues with this, but I'll get into that in a second. The last issue, Ivy was being experimented on in a lab, and they were going to terminate her, so thankfully, I guess, I don't really know, thankfully, she can actually come back from anything, so it's technically whatever happens here doesn't matter, because she can come back wherever she wants. But anyway, she hasn't been terminated. She has been... She has been sold to a creepy old man art dealer, or art collector, I guess. Um, it's very Gotham, I suppose, but what the hell? She does seem to have most of her kind of the green appearance, which is her, um, her modern look, because she is now a being of the green. She's not human. So hopefully all of that goes along with it. All of the stuff that comes with that, such as her being able to come back from anything, anywhere, duplicate herself, yada, yada, yada. Hopefully all of that is going to be recognized as well. My cats don't drink my coffee! Don't drink my coffee! Sorry. Um, and just to be a little picky, I just can't jive with this iteration of Selina. They finally acknowledged Bruce's existence, and about that stupid 1-year break that Tynion put her and Selina on. It doesn't make any sense. And she can't even make it make sense when she explains it. It just, the whole thing of Selina running this kids camp, I guess she's like the queen of Alleytown now, which is fine, whatever, but she didn't wear the Catwoman outfit at all in this. She was just wearing clothes. I don't know. And the art, I honestly feel like, doesn't draw her to look like Selina either, but I might just be getting really picky about this because I love her character. I'm mostly reading this series for the Jenny Frison covers, which are stunning! Stunning is what I said there. And, to find out what happens with Ivy, because I really will pick up any comic that has her in it. Yeah. Eternals number 4. This is by Kieran Gillen. I'm continually surprised by how good this is. It really is just like a Gillen doing for the Eternals what Hickman did for kind of resetting the X-Men. Big takeaway for this issue is Thanos is gonna be a big problem for a long while, probably. This is not good news for the Eternals, and the Eternals have pretty much figured out that Thanos had been working, well, he had to have been working with someone in order to be able to kill their leader guy and disappear. I'm very terrible with names. So they head to the guy who they think is most likely, who is this tricky boy with some mind control abilities that we see in a really cool flashback to, like hundreds of thousands of years ago, whatever it is. But as we see, as they're kind of interrogating him, it turns out it was not him, because Thanos comes crashing through. They had turned off the ability to portal into this area, and he is still able to portal into it, so, transport, whatever you want to say. So clearly he has somebody on the inside, so he comes crashing through here, and tries to kill the tricky boy with the mind control abilities, and almost succeeds, but the other two who are there are able to kind of, she stabs him in the chest, and as they're about to do like a killing blow, he portals himself out of there, which once again, he shouldn't be able to do here because they like turned that all off, the ability for that to happen here. So then after this whole encounter is over, they go off and leave the tricky boy but to himself. We see this guy meet with Thanos, who confirms that he received a mental message from his, mental abilities that got him to, stopped him from killing him. I guess it was, Thanos is the kind of person who, if you were to prove yourself as being an asset to him, he would spare you. So that's, what I'm kind of taking that as is, this guy basically poked him with his mental abilities, and that got Thanos to go, oh, well, that's new, and get the hell out of there, but so that he could go back and talk to him later. So now what this guy says to him is, he asks Thanos, who are you working with to betray the Eternals, and why was it not me? So, this is gonna be a problem, because Thanos is now working with, it appears, 2 different people. He's working with this guy who has mind control abilities, which is hugely problematic, obviously, and then he's also working with this mystery person who got him to get in here in the first place. So, lots of problems the Eternals are going to be facing, and of course there is still Icarus, who is off there, he's basically Superman. He's off there protecting the random Earth boy for kind of unknown reasons. Although he has now Sprite watching over him too. Sprite is female now. Probably gonna cause issues. I can't see that going well, and Icarus being there is probably gonna cause self-fulfilling prophecy things to happen, and the boy's probably gonna die because Icarus was there. And finally, to wrap things up, for the comic book section, we have the Mighty Valkyries #1, which I was oddly shocked by how good this was. I guess I didn't see that coming. We just had what was it? The Return of the Valkyries, which was the King in Black 4-issue crossover series with the same same writers. Torin something I can't pronounce is her last name, but and then with Jason Aaron, they're co-writing it. And this we get, let me think, Mattia DeLulli, possibly mispronounced the last name there, but we get his fantastic cinematic art on this. It is, you see him on the covers and it's beautiful, and oh my gosh, this whole issue with his art on here, are you kidding me? I loved it. It was so great. But this issue, is great for a lot of other reasons besides the art. The art was just the cherry, the massive dripping in juices cherry on top of this beautiful little sundae. For starters, I was wrong about basically everything that I had assumed for this series based on the cover. It was not at all anything like the previous 4 issues that they did for the King in Black tie-in. This is like, it leveled up, I feel like, several levels, so it was great. This is basically what happened through the issue. It kind of comes in a different order than this. So this is more or less what happens. Jane is obviously being the mortician's assistant in the hospital in New York. She's trying to figure out why people keep dying of apparent maulings in the middle of New York City by possibly apparent giant bear creatures or something. So she gets her boss in the morgue, who knows that she is Valkyrie, by the way, or this version of Valkyrie that she is. He gets him to tell her where his secret morgue bar, where all his morgue buddies go to drink and stuff, so that she can go there with the intention of asking around to the other morticians if they have had the same experiences with finding these kinds of deaths in their hospitals. And she ends up spending some time flirting with this big blonde guy, very Thor reminiscent, of course. And she heads out into the alley with him and confronts him because she knew the whole time that was Loki trying to not seduce her, but like trick her. And she was able to find that out easily because he dressed like Thor, or made his appearance look like Thor. Loki has come to her for help, but before he can even get out to the reason why, they kind of get attacked by the thing that he needs help from. It is his grandchildren, who are 2 souls in one gigantic, massive wolf body, who is the wolf child of Loki's own wolf child, Fenris, who's the wolf who has the chain, is the glowing chain, which actually Loki has in this issue. He gives to Jane to help her, hopefully capture his grandchildren / grandchild. I'm not really sure how that works. But Fenris was the wolf that there was a very special chain they had to use to tie him down. So he's got this bit of this chain for her to use for these wolf babies, or this wolf baby, I guess, which is massive. It's not a baby. It's huge. But anyway, this wolf child thing is tracking Loki and attacks as Loki is trying to explain everything that's going on. It is enormous. Jane helps fight it off. Honestly, the pages of her fighting it off are absolutely gorgeous and stunningly cinematic. It is so amazingly good. Loki ends up escaping. Actually, to go back to that for a second, if you know that scene from Ragnarok, people love to pull up the scene from Ragnarok with Thor. It was when one of the I don't remember which Led Zeppelin song it was that was playing. I think it was the Immigrant Song. No, that was the beginning. I don't know. Whatever it was playing when he comes and he jumps down to the Hela's hordes, with the lightning, and it's that very, very beautiful poster-esque image that people will screenshot from that movie. They have several of those in this issue, where it's like this picturesque spread of the action that is just, you gotta stare at for a second because it's gorgeous. Anyway, she helps fight it off. Loki ends up kind of escaping by way of magic at the last second, leaving Jane to confront this creature by herself. And then it speaks, and tells her that it was actually not wanting to kill Loki. They just wanted to maim him a bit. And then it transforms into a person, very, goth Asgardian looking dude who calls himself Mor. Interestingly, he says, "My name is Mor, not our name is Mor." So maybe one child is a wolf and one child is a human, and that's how they have two souls in one body? I don't know. But anyway, very interesting. That's just one part of the plot, too. It goes on. So the second side of the plot takes place in Hell, where Hela's wife, Karnilla, has stolen, for some reason, a set of human triplets from within their mother's womb. Could you imagine, just waking up and you're just not being, she takes them from the mother's womb, where they're, gestating, and brings them to a hidden oasis on Hell, where she has hidden them and herself from Hela. They have clearly been imbued, the babies, with godly power, but her intentions here are super, not a clue, really unclear. Don't know what she's doing with them, don't know why she's hiding them from Hela. Not a clue of what's going on here, but really interested to see what it is, because I didn't know that this was even going to be a plot of this thing. This is this is really awesome. I had no idea this was coming. It's cool. And then the third side of the plot is with the new Valkyrie. So it turns out she doesn't even know her own name. I guess whatever it was that Brunhilde had referred to her as or called her in issue 3 of that King in Black tie-in series, I guess it wasn't her name. I don't know where I thought it was her name, so my bad, I guess. Her journey here in this issue, it's a different artist also, so it was kind of cool how they separated these stories. And I'm very curious to see if they're going to align again, or if it's going to remain two separate stories. Her journey in this issue, it takes her to some far-off planet where they have an actual prophet, who they call the Oracle. This is a creature who was captured long ago and imprisoned, forever telling worshippers the answers to whatever questions they ask. There was actually a really, really cool, insightful bit where it explained how they never ask the right questions. It's always, just one question is allowed, and the Oracle always knows the answers to the more important unasked questions, but he can only tell them what the answers to what they ask. So it's very, it's very insightful and just a really cool moment there in the comic. But the Valkyrie arrives and she goes in and gets the VIP treatment, cutting in line, in front of this enormous line that takes some amount of years apparently to get up to the front. And she gets to go straight up to the front, and she asks the Oracle 2 questions, which causes a big ruckus: what her name is and why she's here. Everyone, of course, freaks out because she asks more than one question. It's against the rules. It's never been done before. But the Oracle answers both questions. He tells her that she is there because of a promise to the woman she loved, a woman he once raised, a woman who died with regret in her heart. She is there to honor a covenant of the Valkyries, and her name is unknown to any living being. It is Runa. Really cool there. Brings up so much to question. We know, of course, Runa was missing for all that time because she got trapped in that Celestial looking for her lost love, who was a fellow Valkyrie. And she died, I believe, in battle. So really, really interesting. I'm wondering what she was raised by this Oracle. But she was a Valkyrie. We clearly have a lot of story to be told here, and I'm looking forward to finding out what that is. The issue ends with Runa asking the Oracle if her axe will break his prison that he's in, this dome that they've put in this enchanted dome, and he says that it will, and so she goes and she smashes it, and that's how it ends. So we can assume that she's going to move on and take the Oracle back to her ship, which apparently she stole from someone who stole it. So I guess she's just kind of going around creating chaos and lying to people to get her way across the galaxy, which honestly, if I had been stuck in a Celestial for thousands and thousands of years the way she did, or had been, I would want to do whatever the hell I wanted to for a little bit. And what she wants to do, it seems, is to fulfill this promise by any means necessary. So I'm really, this was such a great first issue, and I'm very surprised that I liked it as much as I did. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where the story goes. I really hope the rest of them are going to be as good as this one. Obviously, we had a lot of information to be filled in this one, but we have so much more information to be filled in. We have only more questions now. So I really, the Mighty Valkyries, I kind of thought was going to be a bit like the Return of the Valkyries, which was it was fine, it was fun, it was cute. Take it or leave it. This is, I would say, take it. Take this and read it and like it, because I promise you, you will. And that wraps up the talk for comic books this week. There was, of course, as I always say, as I always remind, there is so much more that I don't talk about on my pick list or my poll list. Things that are fantastic, that I know are fantastic, just not things that I read because I don't have an interest in them, or whatever the case may be. Can't fit them into my poll list or read schedule. There's a lot of amazing comics out there, and there's stuff that I don't like that people do love, you know. My opinions and my choices of what I read and talk about for my comics take up a fraction of a fraction, a percentage of a fraction, I suppose, of what's actually out there as far as what you can read for comics and graphic novels. So make sure you stop by a local comic book shop, and they will be more than happy to fill you in with some things to read based on whatever your interests are to read. So didn't think anything I talked about here was interesting. There is several worlds worth of material out there for you to choose from, so that's really cool. Next up, we're going to go ahead and get into Black Lightning. So this week we had Black Lightning episode 8. It was I kind of feel like it was a bit of a filler episode because the last episode we had was called Painkiller. It was kind of the kickoff point for Painkiller's own spin-off show, which I really hope gets picked up and everything works out really well, especially if this is true and we actually are getting this as the last season of Black Lightning. I hope that we get some kind of lead on of its effects into the future, although it won't be the show itself. But this episode felt a little bit like kind of catching up after that last episode that was just about Painkiller and we didn't have any of the Pierce family. I'll kind of just go over the points of things kind of in order about what happens that's important in the episode. It starts off with Anissa and Grace finally deciding to tell the Pierce family about their elopement marriage, which is a nice little moment. They have some great times together. The family is everybody's having a great time. They're all very happy, which is of course how you know that the other shoe is about to drop, and drop it does. That very night, as they're partying, the FBI show up to the Pierce's house during the celebration, saying that they need to search the house because Jefferson has now been accused of embezzlement. Likely Tobias is pulling the strings in the background. He's hitting Jefferson where he knows it's going to hurt the most, aside from attacking his family, which, you know, is never going to end up, he knows it doesn't turn out well. Attacking his reputation in the community. Jefferson Pierce is a pillar of Freeland's community. Pulling him down like this, accusing him of embezzlement, and basically making it look like it's not looking good for him, that is kind of a genius move for an enemy of Jefferson Pierce. You're taking his reputation, you're taking his ability to reach out to other people for help and for references and be like, look, I'm not a bad guy. Look at everybody who says I'm not a bad guy. He's taking that away from him. It's kind of his last resort options. He's kind of removing his safety net. So it's kind of scary. And to make matters worse, Tobias is running for mayor and is actually getting an alarming amount of momentum in his campaign of public opinion, specifically for his concern, quote-unquote concern, over Jefferson Pierce being involved and in charge of their children as principal of the school, and a large figure in the community if he has all these accusations against him. Yikes, this is not looking good. You have to admire Tobias' ability to swing things in his direction through total expert manipulation, and it doesn't help that people make themselves really easy to manipulate, but it is what it is. At the same time, Jefferson is still having trouble also accepting that his daughter Jen is in fact Jen, with her new face and everything that it is. It seems mostly like at first mostly just like it's him being pig-headed about his family for whatever reason, but then there are a few moments in this episode where members of the family thought maybe Jen was acting different than usual. It's kind of a difficult thing to question because they are all going through so much right now, Jen included, So it would make sense, well, probably Jen almost more than anybody with her physical changes. So it would make sense for people's behavior to somehow, change in times of great change and stress. But at the same time, with her physical appearance change, it does bring into question whether this is Jen or not legitimately. What changed, besides her appearance? The actress Laura Kariuki is doing a absolutely fantastic job as Jennifer. She has the way that the old actress talks down pretty pat, so that's fantastic. This week, Jen went back to school, pretending they're not going to say it's Jen, obviously. That would be ridiculous. There would be so many questions. They're saying that she is the girl's cousin, I think is what it was, and she's visiting from out of town, staying with a family. Which means that people were fine with saying things about her dad in front of her because they don't know who she really is. So she had to face her dad's name being smeared through the dirt by the students that he cares so much for, which is a really hard thing. And again, just goes to show how terrible it is that Tobias has this sway over the community about Jefferson specifically. It just goes to show how absolutely detrimental that is going to be to Jefferson's everything in his life and his family's life. Also in this episode, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names, but there was the woman from a few episodes ago who attacked Jefferson and canceled out his powers, or whatever it was. Lynn discovers in this episode that her meta power, was to cancel out powers. That's what it was. It was a cool scene of discovering that, kind of like that kid in the X-Men, what was that, X-Men 3? I think it was. We want to talk about those old movies. But Lynn, as the addict that she is, she's no longer taking the genes for herself. She's asking Gambi to do it for her, which honestly is probably just as bad of a slippery slope. It's probably going to end with her back doing some kind of drugs on herself again, or getting someone else severely hurt with this Gambi or someone else. These powers, as we've seen in previous seasons, can kill you if they develop on you. So, yeah, this could definitely cause some problems for the family. And then, of course, Painkiller is here. He is, he's just kind of checking up on Jen through TC, who is the tech kid. TC tech kid, that's kind of funny. He didn't really have too much of a role in this, but it's kind of a funny combination to see him and the little tech nerd getting along like that. No real word on him from the fact that Jen looks different. They just kind of acknowledged it, and he didn't really have an opinion, so that's probably better that way, honestly. That was kind of it. It wasn't too big of an episode. The basic things, it was... I hate to say, but it just kind of feel like an episode is having just talked about it now. It definitely felt like just putting in new pieces to move the show along further, and kind of putting in the steps so that we can get to point B from this point A. So, not a bad episode, just a bit of a filler episode to catch us up after the whole, the last episode being just about Painkiller. Again, I have a lot of mixed feelings about how this show is canceled, apparently to make room for Superman and Lois. Mostly bad feelings. This show I obviously really like, and Superman and Lois is a show that I really, really enjoy as well. But it does put a terrible taste in your mouth to see that this show was canceled to make room for that one, when they are basically the same thing from the surface, and that's why they canceled this one. But they're not the same thing at all. They're very, very different. And why do we have to cancel this show about a black family to make room for a show about a white family? That's what the bad taste in my mouth is kind of boiling down to. I will keep my eyes and ears open for how much of that is true. It's a little bit under a month until Superman and Lois will come back as a show. I think it's May 18th is when it returns. So I'll wait and see how I feel about that when it shows up. I will probably still be watching it, although if I'm going to be reviewing it episodically still, we will have to wait and see. Plus, there's always stuff with the MCU and the DCU, other things that are coming out that I could talk about, so we'll wait and see what happens with that. As for the time being, I will be reviewing these final episodes of the Black Lightning show. I imagine they're going to be doing the 13 or 16 or whatever it was as they did with the last seasons. So we're at least halfway through here, if not further. And I will be continuing talking about them as they go along. Now we are going to get into the back half of the episode, which is covering news, updates, announcements, and rumors and things like that. So we're going to start with the Flash movie updates, which I'm sure everybody has heard of by now, which was Michael Keaton's role as Batman was confirmed in the Flash movie, and it started filming on Monday. So that's really exciting. They are officially filming, I believe it was Monday the 18th. It was Monday the 19th, so they're several days into it now, and I have no doubt it's going to be an interesting film. This is, of course, the movie where Ray Fisher was fired from because of his speaking out against certain members of the DC Comics and Warner Brothers higher-ups, I guess. While that's obviously super problematic, especially since the reasons he was speaking out against them dealt with things like racism and it's things like that are just have no place in the film community. Toxicity, you don't have to have a toxic film environment to make art on your film. So that is a lie that was spread for a very long time, and it's not true. You don't need to be terrible to people for them to perform well. And of course, Keaton is being just a Batman. We don't know if we can assume he's going to be the Batman that we saw when he was Batman, just aged up or whatever. But we also, I believe that, I'm not sure if it's rumored or if it's confirmed that Ben Affleck was going to be in this. I think it's just rumored he was going to be in it. But this is supposed to be the Flashpoint movie. So there's a lot of speculation as to what this could mean. It's confirmed that he was Batman. It's not just rumors anymore, and the movie is filming. So, really exciting there for people who are excited for that kind of stuff. And then we also have, for the MCU, we have the Secret Invasion updates and Love and Thunder updates. For Secret Invasion, actress Olivia Colman is currently in talks, more than likely joining the Marvel Secret Invasion TV show. The rumor for her is that she might be the Skrull Queen. I think she definitely has a face for it. I'm familiar with her from Doctor Who, of all things. She was in it for a few episodes, or possibly just one episode, and it just stuck with me. I think it was just one episode. Because if it's what I'm thinking of, it was just this terrifying monster that she just, had these... whatever, doesn't matter. But she definitely has the face for a Skrull Queen, I think. And I think that'd be really cool. Also announced for that show is Emilia Clarke has apparently been cast in an as-yet unknown role. Speculation for her includes Jessica Drew, who is Spider-Woman, which... I see why they're thinking that, because the Skrull Queen impersonates Jessica Drew for a very long time in the comics, but it wouldn't really work, in my opinion, to her character's advantage to have her first introduced then in the show and not previously. If we already know and are familiar with Jess/Spider-Woman, the twist that she's been a Skrull Queen this whole time, or for most of the time that we've known her, will hit a lot harder. She could have also been cast as a Skrull Queen, although I agree that Coleman would be a better option. My vote, however, is for Abigail Brand, who is the leader of S.W.O.R.D., which is what Fury is currently leading right now, so it would make way for the perfect introduction for her. Plus, I believe Emilia Clarke could totally pull off her green hair, green eyebrows, green eyes, green outfit. I think that she has the perfect skin tone for that. I think it would work out really well. Of course, they are joining Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, Ben Mendelsohn as the Skrull Talos. We also have rumors about Quake being supposedly making her appearance in this. She was in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, potentially as a member of S.W.O.R.D. now that everything is the way that it is. And we also have, nothing confirmed on that though, we also have Kingsley Ben-Adir cast as potentially Super Skrull, is what people are theorizing. I have to agree that's probably the most likely thing. If you have other ideas, though, let me know, because I'm curious what people are thinking about this. But anyway, as my husband said, every time we hear another update for the Secret Invasion show, as it is going to be another show on Disney Plus, every time we hear an update, it just seems to be getting better and better. So, the timing of things, you know, if we're going to get a Spider-Woman introduction before that or not, if we're going to even get Spider-Woman tied into this or not, you know, there's a lot they could do. There's a lot of characters they could pull in, you know, there's a lot of references they could make to characters who have appeared, like Elektra, but aren't necessarily in this same MCU universe yet. You know, there's so much, there's a wealth of things they could do here. And every time they make one of these announcements, I just get more excited. So, that's, I think, coming out in 2022 or 2023. I don't honestly know. It's gonna be a while, so don't wait around, don't hold your breath. Thor Love and Thunder is, of course, filming, and yesterday Russell Crowe slipped up in an interview and said that he is playing Zeus. I'm sure Marvel is not very happy with him right now, but c'est la vie. This, you know, as disappointing as it is that he's not Beta Ray Bill, which, yeah, of course, there's always a possibility that he slipped up with a lie. I don't know. I'm assuming, though, that he's Zeus, because it kind of makes sense. Especially with the fact that you have Gore the God Butcher here, so we're probably going to be seeing a number of gods in this movie getting killed by Christian Bale's Gore the God Butcher. Probably be like a montage of that or something, I don't know. But I am super disappointed that he's not Beta Ray Bill. I still have hope that we're going to see Beta Ray Bill in this movie. We don't know if we're going to get another Thor movie, but honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. I think with them bringing in Jane Foster as a Thor character, or as a Thor iteration herself, I think that's them kind of phasing out Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth, I feel like it's probably going to get phased out before too long from the MCU anyway, as he was one of the, you know, more original characters that they brought in, so the big three, so you might say. And I'm sure, you know, he's probably feeling like he's done enough work here for this shit. So it's been at least a decade for him. So disappointing. I still think we're gonna get Beta Ray Bill. I feel like at this point, if we don't get Beta Ray Bill, it would kind of be like not getting Clea in the Doctor Strange movies at all. Massive injustice. Beta Ray Bill was one of the Thors. Plus, if they're having Thor dress like the Thunderstrike version of him, which wasn't him, it was a whole other character. You're referencing that guy really hardcore. Can we not get Beta Ray Bill in here? I understand that we've already had Stormbreaker, you know, show up and everything, but we can still have him brought in here. I feel like that could still happen. But with this news that Russell Crowe is apparently playing Zeus, you get the theories that there's going to be a lot of gods seen and killed, including the theories that we might see Hercules in this, which would be very interesting to me because he's kind of like a black sheep of the gods in the Marvel universe. So I could potentially see him going on to be like a Guardian of the Galaxy or something, you know, especially since the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to be in this movie for some amount of time, at least the beginning portion, whatever that amount of time will be. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, very interesting. You have some things that are now being put together for what's going to happen in this movie based on this accidental announcement of Zeus being in it. But at the same time, really wish that was Beta Ray Bill. I'm still holding out hope that we're going to see Beta Ray Bill in this. Even if it's just like an end credit scene where he meets up with Thor at a bar or something. We gotta have him. He's so much part of Thor's mythology and story and everything in Marvel. Like, you gotta have Beta Ray Bill. Good for Russell Crowe on Zeus, but I'm still waiting on Beta Ray Bill. To wrap up the movie updates, I want to talk about Mad Max Furiosa. I've seen all three of the Mel Gibson ones, and I kind of said at the beginning of this that I like the whole Mad Max thing. I have to... It's not quite accurate. I like the Mad Max movie that came out in 2015. I've seen all three of the Mel Gibson ones. I'm sorry, real talk, they are not good. They just aren't any good. They're terrible, honestly. I remember the first one being maddeningly boring, like insanely boring. The second one just being ridiculous, and I remember a lot of black leather, and the third one had a bunch of kids in it being led by Mel Gibson. I don't really know why. Point is, compared to those, Mad Max from 2015 was a masterpiece of post-apocalyptic car movies. If I could get the words out right, this would sound a lot better. However, after talking to my husband about how it just wasn't a movie that really fazed him, I realized that a lot of my connection to it comes from the themes of sisterhood, women helping each other out, the struggle of women to fight for their freedom, etc., etc. Lots of very strong themes like that, which makes the movie stand out for me still to this day. So maybe that explains a little bit of why my connection to it. I've seen it probably at least probably close to 10 times at this point. I get that a lot of people didn't like it because it was just a car thing. I feel like from a certain perspective, this movie is something else. It meant a lot more from a certain perspective, a certain decidedly female perspective. So, but anyway, the updates that we have for Mad Max Furiosa. Furiosa is of course going to be the origin story of the character Furiosa, who's played by Charlize Theron. So now we have, I guess, the first real updates of this prequel. There's a lot of rumors that were going on for a long time, and this is like the first official announced thing, as far as I know. It's going to be starring Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and will be filming in 2022 in New South Wales. So, location, not super interesting. Cast, though, if this is a prequel story, sort of, for Furiosa, an origin story, we have to assume Anya Taylor-Joy is obviously going to be playing Furiosa. Chris Hemsworth potentially playing Immortan Joe. I don't know why they would make him attractive. That was kind of weird. He's a villain. Like he's like, you see what he ends up being. He's a rapist, torturer, kind of dictator. Don't really get why they would cast that as Chris Hemsworth. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, of course, is he played Dr. Manhattan in the Watchmen TV show, and he's been in a bunch of other things that were fantastic, but that's what I remember him from the most. Really excellent job as well. He just blew that shit out of the park. If you haven't seen the Watchmen show, I recommend it. But anyway, I don't know what he would be playing in here. Not a clue. But the director, I believe, is George Miller, and he teased that the film is apparently a saga happening over many years. So, that leaves me wondering if perhaps we're going to be getting multiple actresses playing Furiosa, and if Anya Taylor-Joy might just be one for that age period. Or it's possible they're going to have her do the Queen's Gambit thing, where the same actress covers a wide span of time for this character, which would work out well enough. What we know for Furiosa's backstory based on the Mad Max 2015 movie is that she was born and raised in a community of women who lived in a green place, or potentially knew of a green place. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen it in a few years. But they were together, and they were just like this commune of women. And she was taken from them, I believe, on an outing. I don't think she was taken from the community itself. I believe she was taken when she was away from the community. At some age, unknown age. And then works for Immortan Joe as his Furiosa, as his, like, leader of his train of angry car people. So we know that. So we'll probably be seeing that happen. Unsure how much of that is going to be, we're going to be seeing that, place that commune of women very much, or if it's just going to be flashbacks within the movie. It says it's going to happen over a matter of years, so theoretically, you could see this from her very young childhood to her Charlize Theron age. So I'm really curious. Anya Taylor-Joy is, of course, a fantastic actress. I think I've loved everything that I've seen her in, so really, really great actress. So I have no doubt she's going to be able to pull this off very well, especially if she does the shaved head thing. I feel like she's probably somebody who would have the dedication enough to do that. I don't know if people care about Mad Max like this, or if it's just me, but I'm looking forward to it to see. I guess it's a completely unnecessary movie, obviously, but It sounds like a hell of a lot of fun and interesting enough to me, so I'm very much here for it. There are some announcements made by Sony this past week about their streaming schedule that they have planned coming up. They struck a deal to bring their movies to Disney's streaming service, which is, of course, Disney Plus, as well as various cable networks. The release schedule for Sony theatrical releases are going to be video on demand and then Netflix, and after that it will be Disney Plus. So obviously video on demand comes a while after theatrical releases. Netflix will come several months, I believe it said 8 months after that, and then Disney Plus will probably be several months after Netflix. This deal will last from the years 2022 to 2026, and titles that are going to be included, which is the relevant portion of this news, the Marvel Spider-Man, the MCU Spider-Man, all 3 of the movies, because of course we have the 3rd movie coming out this December, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Into the Spider-Verse 1 and 2, Venom 1 and 2, because of course Venom number 2 is coming out later this year, and Into the Spider-Verse number 2 is coming out, I believe, early next year, and Ghost Rider 1 and 2, which honestly I forgot were even movies that existed. Also Morbius, which, has anybody heard about Morbius in a while? Is it still happening? It's on this list, so I imagine it must be. I kind of thought it had come out. Has it come out? I don't know. I should know. But yeah, that's Sony's new streaming schedule. If you are all interested in those movies, that's where you're going to be able to find them. For the time being, I assume we're going to have the ones that are already out on Netflix and potentially Disney Plus. I'll have to check into that myself with my accounts. I assume they're going to be on Netflix starting in 2022. Finally, to wrap up the episode, Wonder Girl number 1, which is Joelle Jones's Yara Flor Wonder Girl Brazilian Wonder Woman project. Woo! That was a string of words that made no sense. They released a preview. It's coming out, the number 1 issue is coming out next month. Joelle Jones obviously is... Oh my gosh, I hope they're paying her all the money. I'm sure they're not, but she deserves all the accolades for this. Based on these few preview pages that they put out, this is going to be at least as stunning and gorgeous as the Wonder Woman Future State series that she did starring Yara Flor this past February and March, or I guess January and February is what it was. It was that's a high bar, and she seems to be leaping straight over it. And this is just a preview with no text. It's just the art. And random pages at that. Nothing connected, really. I have a few connected, but it's just getting me so excited for this. The first issue is going to have variants by J. Scott Campbell, Raphael Grandpa, and Bilquis Evely. Raphael Grandpa is excellent, and of course Bilquis Evely is as well. I'm not a fan of J. Scott Campbell's art. Number 2, which will be coming out in June, will have a variant cover by Will Murray, and number 3, which is coming out in July, is going to have a variant cover by Matteo Scalera, who did the Harley Quinn White Knight series with Katana Collins and Sean Gordon Murphy just recently. He's doing the variant cover for number 3, and the main cover is, of course, Joelle Jones's art, and it's a headshot of Yara Flor looking completely enchanted, and it says on the cover, "Ensnared by Eros." So that's interesting. It seems Yara Flor is going to get herself into a bit of trouble with love. But based on these preview pages that we see for the first issue, it looks like it's a bit of backstory for Yara that she potentially doesn't remember when she grows up. It looks like there is some kind of god figure, potentially Hades or someone similar to that, who approaches the Brazilian Amazon tribe, potentially to take over. It seems that they're refusing to submit to him, and a child, who you have to assume is Yara, runs up and stabs him with a little dagger in his leg. Her mother, the queen or ruler or whatever it is of the tribe, stands tall as she is beheaded in front of her daughter. So, we're going to be getting some really cool stuff here. We're going to be getting some very deep backstory, probably a good amount of research that Joelle Jones did into Brazilian culture. I'm hoping, at least. And oh my god, her art. Her art is sensual. Her inking is like, I can't think of it. Sensual is just the word that comes to mind when I look at a page that she has inked, Joelle Jones has inked. It is delectable. All those words, you know. It's satisfying and beautiful and just completely fantastic. And it's not a whole lot of a preview to go off of, but I wanted to mention it because I really am that excited for it, and it does seem to be holding up to my expectations. And that wraps up this Friday's episode. I am happy if you have made it this far. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening. I appreciate any amount of listening that you do on my podcast episodes, always. If you would like to find me online, my website is www.sensationalshegeek.weebly.com. I have been a little bit lack in posting on my blog there, which I normally would post reviews and such. Since I have started this podcast, I have been focused a lot more on that because it works out with my time and schedule a lot better, to be honest. But I do post my podcast notes after each episode, or once a week-ish, to make sure that if you are a person who has a hearing impairment, or if you just prefer to read what it is I have to say on these podcasts, I put the notes up on my website each week that are going to be, are the notes that I take throughout the week in order to know and remember what it is that I'm talking about based on the news, the comics, whatever it is that is the subject of the hour. I also have Instagram. My Instagram is Anna with the Comics. My Twitter is Savage She-Geek. And you can find this podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts can be listened to, including YouTube, which, if you follow it on YouTube, go ahead and follow me, give it a like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Whatever you listen to this on, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon, Google, whatever it is that you listen to this on, please give it a rating, give it a subscription. The more people interact with the podcast, the more it will be seen by other people, which is always the goal. So, thank you again very much for listening. The next episode will be this coming Monday on April 26th. That will be episode 15A. We're getting close to 30 episodes here, so that's exciting for me, I guess. Episode 15A on Monday the 26th. We'll be covering, of course, the finale, today's finale of the first season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's supposed to be really excellent. I've already had to avoid Twitter to avoid spoilers, and it's going to be a hard day of doing that until my husband comes home tonight and we watch it together, finally. So that is very exciting to make sure you check back in Monday or sometime after Monday to listen to that. And I'll most likely talk a little bit at some point about the Mortal Kombat movie, potentially on Monday as well, just because it's a fun battle royale type thing that I get a kick out of it, and it's very enjoyable to me. So thank you once again for listening. I hope you come back to listen again for next episodes. And in the meantime, try to be nice to life forms that are around you, and, stay sweaty. Find something to get sweaty about this week and sweat it out for me.